Hello, welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here are the stories that are coming up within the half hour. It's day 2 of the U.S. government shutdown. The White House says mass layoffs of federal workers are imminent. There could be permanent job losses. Police in Manchester declare attack on a synagogue a terrorist incident. And Mandela's son is abducted by Israeli naval forces aboard the global Suman flotilla. Let's begin The World Today. It's day 2 since the U.S. government shut down. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight just yet. The grim news from the White House, though. President Donald Trump says mass layoffs of federal workers are imminent and could result in people losing their jobs. The president seems to be in no hurry, however, to have regular activities return. He posted on social media that the Republicans should use the shutdown to clear out dead wood. In a shutdown, the White House and Office of Management and Budget have full control over which arms of the executive branch will stay running. Democrats and Republicans are trading blame over the shutdown, the first in almost 7 years, under which thousands of workers have been put on unpaid leave. House Speaker Mike Johnson says Democrats are being selfish in not voting to pass the continuing resolution to keep the government open. At a White House briefing, Vice President J.D. Vance accused Democrats of playing political games and urged them to reopen the government.
We're not targeting federal agencies based on politics. We're targeting the people's government so that as much as possible of the essential services can continue to function. That is the question the president has asked the entire government is fundamentally, okay, we're in a shutdown. That causes some problems. The troops aren't getting paid. There's nothing that we can do about that while the government is shut down. But there are essential services that we want to make sure as much as possible they still continue to function. That is the principle that's driving us forward during this shutdown. It's going to continue to be the principle that drives us forward. But let's be honest, if this thing drags on for another few days or God forbid another few weeks, we are going to have to lay people off. We're going to have to save money in some places so the essential services don't get turned off in other places. That is the reality of the government shutdown that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have foisted upon the administration. The president is saying, Phil, is that he wants to make sure the American people's government functions as well as it can, despite the fact that we're in a shutdown. We're going to have to make things work. And that means that we're going to have to triage some certain things. That means certain people are going to have to get laid off. And we're going to try to make sure that the American people suffer as little as possible from this shutdown. That's what the president is saying, is that, yes, this is a bad thing. Obviously, the president is trying to reopen the government, but we're going to make things work as well as we possibly can, given the constraints that we have.
Our correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Maria, and I'm sure that many Americans do not want to replicate what happened 7 years ago under the Obama administration when the government shut down. About 800,000 federal employees were indefinitely followed. Another 1.3 million were required to report to work without known payment dates. Could that happen again in this government shutdown?
Yes, you are exactly correct. That could happen again. We went on for weeks with that last government shutdown. And what we know is that at this time, individuals, as you've mentioned, are on unpaid leave, which we consider furloughs here in the United States. And so this unpaid leave does forego any payment they may receive for these 2 days that the government is closed. Not only are we looking at potentially individuals being paid, and many of the buildings and services being definitely cut out. And we think about those individuals who are on Medicaid, Medicare, social service programs that are now not able to fully function. They have stated that there are essential need for individuals who are going to be working to provide some of those social service payments. So those should still be going out. But this is a much larger issue. The very interesting, though, as you mentioned and as you shared earlier, is that they're stating that they're mass layoffs. Even prior to the government being shut down, the president and his administration mentioned that there could be layoffs, which is very different tune than what we've heard in previous government shutdowns.
There's no backing down now, is there, for the Republicans and the Democrats in Congress? They've been at it almost every day since talk about the shutdown has been on. House Speaker Mike Johnson says Democrats are being selfish in not voting to pass the continuing resolution to keep the government open. First off, talk to us about what this resolution is and why this has to be the filibuster for a proper administrative running off for the U.S. government.
Yes, well, as we've seen in years past, and most funding bills typically have other constraints that are tied to them. This one, per se, is the Democrats are very clear about what they want to be offered to Americans around health care. There has been some challenges around health insurance in the United States, and so health care has become a major issue for many Americans. And so that has been added in to these bills, and that's what the Democrats are calling for, is to have some sort of a reform or going back to some of the other health care provisions that were in place during the Biden administration. So that's the real key functionality that is very different, and that Republicans are not voting in favor of, and then Democrats are obviously not voting in favor of a reduction and not to include these medical care provisions.
Wondering, Maria, if there is any common ground the Republicans and the Democrats could find amidst this quarrel, this tension going on.
Yes, there is a huge quarrel going on in this quarrel, and I do apologize, medical vehicles, but there is a huge quarrel going on right now between Democrats and Republicans. Clearly, Democrats and Republicans are not seeing this as a way to move forward in the Congress. Obviously, we know it's been very divided right now. Republicans are in the majority, but there are Democrats that are able to hold out so that this funding bill does not go forward. Now, when you think about the funding here in the United States and what this will entail, this is all of our national park services, anything that potentially would be open, whether it's our tax and revenue office, and we are obviously preparing, many people are preparing for and needing to use those services. So this has been just 2 days, but this has definitely been 2 days that I think Americans are wondering how this will have an impact. And obviously our economy has been struggling for quite some time. And so will this have an adverse effect on inflation rates that we've seen, and obviously just the American people having the money in their accounts to be able to do their everyday activities.
Now, President Donald Trump, I presume he does have the opportunity to break this tie between the Republicans and the Democrats, but he has been fueling that tension, talking about how many people will be laid off and how the government could grind to a halt. What can he do to help douse this tension?
Well, I think that there's just such a very different opinion between Democrats and Republicans as it relates to how the government should be run. And so we're in a standstill. We've seen the president has brought Democrats and Republicans to the White House to try to avoid this government shutdown. And so the philosophies are very different, and it's going to really require both parties to be able to, at some level, come to agreement on very different philosophical issues. The president will likely be able to address some of the medical health care needs, and it probably, hopefully, will not go past this week. We'll be able to address those. As we know, Senator Chuck Schumer has been very vocal on this issue and very vocal to say that he's asking for very specific items for the president to move forward on and to obviously work with the Republican Party on. And as you mentioned, these layoffs, that is a very new repercussion of government shutdown. Typically, they are able to save some money with the furloughs. Yes, the buildings are not open, services are not open, and so there are some costs associated with that. But to have these mass layoffs is something that is unprecedented. And we do know that DOJ obviously was very instrumental in the layoff process earlier in the year. And so the question is whether or not we'll see something similar.
All right, Maria, thanks again for reporting back on this one. We'll keep touching base with you regarding other developments. Let's cross the pond now to the UK, where British police have declared the deadly attack on a synagogue in Manchester a terrorist incident. 2 members of the Jewish community have died, while 4 others remain in hospital. The offender was shot and killed by police within 7 minutes of a call being made to emergency services. Greater Manchester authorities said the attacker was stopped from entering the synagogue by the bravery of security staff and the worshippers. Counter-terror officers say that they believe they know the identity of the attacker. 2 other people have been arrested in connection with the attack. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been engaged in a Cobra meeting emergency. He's had to cut short his trip to Copenhagen, where he was attending a leaders' summit. One witness told the police, said the police gave the suspect a couple of warnings, but he did not listen, and then they opened fire.
The attack in Manchester this morning is absolutely shocking, and all of our thoughts are with those affected. I'm on my way back to London. When I arrive, I will chair an emergency Cobra meeting. I'm already able to say that additional police assets are being deployed to synagogues across the country, and we will do everything to keep our Jewish community safe. I've spoken to Mark Gardner of the CST and Andy Burnham, Mayor of Manchester, and I want to thank the emergency services for the speed of their response.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The attack that happened on a synagogue church happened today, a celebration of Yom Kippur. Now, the Israeli Navy has intercepted boats carrying aid to Gaza and detained the activists on board, including Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg. Israel's foreign ministry says those aboard the global Sumud flotilla are being taken to an Israeli port for deportation. The first boats were stopped in international waters about 70 nautical miles off Gaza. Israel says the vessels were entering an active combat zone and violating a lawful naval blockade. Among those reportedly seized is South African activist Mandla Mandela, a grandson of former President Nelson Mandela, who was on board one of the flotilla's ships. Reportedly came under attack from drones and water cannons before being boarded.
I'm a citizen of the Republic of South Africa. If you are receiving this video, it means that we have been intercepted and have been abducted by the apartheid state of Israel. I call on you to request our government to exert pressure for my immediate release.
The UN General Assembly is over. Leaders have returned to their various countries up until next year. What were the gains made at this special landmark global meeting? Here are my thoughts.
That peace is naive.
This year's General Assembly at the United Nations was built to be an occasion for leaders to reflect on the journey so far, and realization that despite ideologies and beliefs, we are all better together. Going by the addresses made at the General Assembly Hall, the only coalitions that were made were of countries that formally recognized the Palestinian state and African leaders who called for a permanent seat at the Security Council amidst the calls for reform at the UN.
Nigeria must have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. This should take place. This should take place as part of a wider process of institutional reform.
Institutions rarely fail because they lack vision or ideals. More often, they drift into irrelevance when they do not adapt, when they hesitate to act, and when they lose legitimacy.
That call did not gain much traction at the Assembly, even though nearly every African leader who took to the podium made the call amidst highlighting other issues of global attention. Geopolitical analyst Onyekachi Adekoya says the UN cannot avoid the topic of a permanent seat for Africa much longer.
Let's get the seat for Africa, but let's find a mechanism to rotate among regional powers in Africa so that Africa gets the seat, but we don't lose focus.
What did, however, gain traction was the war in Gaza and the calls for the recognition of a Palestinian state. One remarkable event was the walkout by diplomats when the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took to the podium for his speech. He rejected outright the idea of a Palestinian statehood.
Giving the Palestinians a state 1 mile from Jerusalem after October 7th is like giving Al-Qaeda a state 1 mile from New York City after September 11th.
Stories such as US President Donald Trump being stuck on an escalator inside the UN building, his teleprompter failing at the point when he was about to give his speech, and him bashing the UN for not acknowledging his peace efforts and ending 7 wars made the headlines. On the sidelines of the assembly, the UK, France and Germany announced that they would be reinstating sanction resolutions against Iran. Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, pledged reprisal. So what are the tangible outcomes of the UNGA? The answer is relative, depending on who is asked. Measurable progress can be monitored in upcoming UN Security Council meetings and resolutions. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
Delegates at the W20 Gauteng Outreach Dialogue are calling for stronger measures to close the gender gap in financial inclusion, stressing that it is vital for driving economic growth and resilience across the continent. The dialogue is a lead-up to the W20 summit taking place later this month. Organizers say the focus is on moving from promises to action to ensure women are not left behind in global policy making. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa, reports.
Outreach Dialogue forms part of many sides events leading up to the Y20 Summit to be held in October 2025. The dialogue brings together leading academic institutions, international organizations, and specialized initiatives focused on women economic empowerment across Africa.
So at the Africa Women Financial Inclusion Initiative, we've actually just partnered recently with the Gracia Michel Trust, and we have launched a program in South Africa called the New Faces, New Voices program. This program is going to be very inclusive. We are actually not working just in the big cities, but across all 9 provinces. And when we say 9 provinces, we are doing a balance. We're going to be we're doing financial dialogues with women both in towns as well as rural women.
She emphasized that women need to be confident, step forward, and actively seek out information.
The finances there, we've heard about how many funding opportunities are there. But now what comes is that we saw that women are actually not having the barriers that they're facing. They're not confident. They're not coming forward with, that confidence to be able to say, let me go and be able to pitch. So to be investor ready when, let's say, they're going to look for that funding opportunity.
Meanwhile, Dr. Okido Wedi from Human Sciences Research Council outlined the major barriers that continues to prevent women across Africa from accessing financial services.
There are a number of barriers affecting women. So outside of a macro level, being policy and systemic level, that's our culture. And also internally, there's lack of confidence in what we can do. However, the IMF and several other organizations have shown that bringing women on board economically actually increases the GDP of a country, and particularly in the Southern African region.
Delegates here also took some time to wish Nigeria a happy Independence Day.
I want to say to all Nigerians, happy anniversary, happy Nigeria Day, and keep pushing. You are driving the economic, the social and political, aspect of Africa very well, and also you're a resilient nation. So continue being audacious and being powerful. And a special message to our college students: we love you and keep shining.
As the Y20 Summit approaches later this month, the Gauteng Outreach Dialogue has set the tone by calling for practical action on gender equality. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
If you missed them, they're back now. Those are the Dubai fountains, or the Dubai fountain. Usually spectacular when you visit Dubai. A sight to behold, of course. It's back now, also known as the Dancing Fountain, after renovation work for a few months. You can see it when you visit the city. Submerged in the 30-acre Burj Lake, the attraction stretches the length of 2 football pitches and can propel more than 22,000 gallons of water up to 140 meters in the air. This was first opened in 2009 and it's been one of the most visited free attractions in the city, offering choreographed shows that blend water, light and music into a breathtaking nightly performance. That's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.